Hello, everyone. Welcome to this little introduction on Edge RPG. It's the role playing game that I made, and it's now available on the DriveThruRPG since October last year. Um, I'm going to go through the book here and all of my 5 books. I'm going to give you a little bit of a summary, a little bit of a sneak peek preview of what you get for your money, which is not a lot. Each of these books, so the core rules, the Codex Infinitum books, each of these are about €5 a pop, which translates to about $5.60 thereabouts. And the Edge Starter set, which is a condensed set of rules, is basically a pay what you want title. So you can get it for as low as 1 cent if you want. And that's just like a intro set to the game, so that should hype you up for the real thing, hopefully. All right, let's go through the game. So here you have the cool rules. Edge stands for either Death or Glory Eternal. You'll see why, because this game is a little bit more brutal than your average D&D. It does away with a lot of HP bloating, and is a lot more realistic in that sense. You're not immortal. You are not, unbeatable. But anyway, it's a multi-setting game. So in each setting, this meta setting, basically has 3 different timelines. The first one is called Gaia, the second one is called Unity, and the third is called the Omniverse. And these are the 3 books that I'm going to go through as well. Each of these has its own setting book. The reason why I made 3 timelines is because the first one is like a fantasy setting. The second is like a dystopian sort of low magic kind of post-apocalyptic like setting. And then the third one is like a spacefaring, Star Trek like plus magic setting. So everyone can get something that they like. That's why I made 3 of them, because I know that certain people like fantasy but don't like the other, genres, or they don't like fantasy but like the other genres. So it's got something for everyone. And this section is just explaining like the nature of reality beyond the reality that you play in. So basically the meta, I don't want to say metaverse, but the meta universe around the settings, and how it all works, how it's all connected, how it was created, all that stuff. You have roles and classes, and basically the instructions on how to progress through levels. Characterization is very fluid in my game. It means that you can mix and match a lot of different features from different classes together. So that's my version of multi-classing. It combines that sort of classic class progression with like a linear set of trees that you put points in and unlock abilities in. So think kind of like classes from D&D plus a progression system similar to Vampire the Masquerade, maybe, if you know what those are like. And my classes are all also have something called roles, which are kind of like meta classes. So basically, warrior breaks down into berserker, weapon master, champion, martial artist classes. And then you have scoundrel role, which breaks down into classes, the specialist role, and then the mage role. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the point is, I tried to get every single possible trope in here in terms of the types of different characters you can play. There's everything from close range brawlers to summoners to necromancers, whatever you want. Now, what's different in my game is that roles also give you a bonus based on which race you're playing. So let's say an Ashen warrior is going to get a different bonus than, let's say, a Primorian warrior. And it kind of reflects their race. So this is like an extra bit of customization you get when you make your character. And then we have these different classes, and each class has a feature, and then when you pick the feature, you get the passive bonuses. Your class, your core class also determines your armor, shield proficiency, stuff like that. But then you put points into these features that you've chosen and you unlock these abilities. So you have like wrestling feature, and you also have fury feature, and you have destruction feature. So each class has 5 features. You put points in them, you unlock stuff. So you mix and match the stuff that you like. You can borrow stuff from other classes as long as you have the stats for it. The only difference is that the ones you borrow that are not from your core class, those you can't develop all the way. You can only kind of upgrade them halfway. But it gives a nice little added customization. I've seen all kinds of different builds in this game so far from my players. So I think that's definitely one of the stronger aspects in this game. There's also charisma builds if you're a charisma character. You want to do like a good charisma character. No stat is useless in this game. I tried really, really hard to make every stat useful in its own way. So, keep going through these classes here. And, alright, then we have the class appendices. These are just like extra explanations for certain class features. For example, the assassin poisoning feature allows you to make poisons, so obviously I had to expand on this here. Gives you some poisons to craft from different herbs. Obviously there's not a lot, but you know, these are more like, think of these more as templates that you can further expand. There's deconstruction for engineer to make constructs. You have research for engineer for upgrades and stuff. Augmentation for magical piercings and tattoos, if you will. Shape-shifting for shaman, different animals. Summoning for weaver to summon demons or guardians, etc. And now you got character creation. This is like a 2-page set of directions on how to make a character. It's not too complicated. Everything is expanded on here. Everything is explained where you can find it. It's a 9-step thing. You can even skip some steps if you don't need them. So that's that. You have an origin, which is kind of like your background. So you have gives you some bonuses to your talents and some starting cash and some starting items. There's not a many. I think there's 16 so far, but you can use these as templates for your own. You got a drive, which is kind of like where your character is going in terms of their goals, if you want to determine those or not. You have a reputation system, which is pretty different than most reputation systems. It's based on what the public knows about your character, not what they're actually like. You can be extremely evil and have no infamy just because you're really good at covering your tracks. So kind of like the reputation is kind of like the outward perception of your character, but then you'll also have the morality, which is your character's inner sort of perception of their morals and such. You have quirks. These are like little role-playing things, little role-playing aspects of your character you can play to get some bonuses if you adhere to them, even in a dangerous situation. You got faith and morality. Here you can choose to worship a god or not worship a god. The idea is that the gods are always watching your actions and that morality is tied to them. Basically, you know, maybe the old lady doesn't see you swiping her purse, but the god of justice will. And he might not do anything yet. But the more heinous you become or the more good you become, the more you're going to be affected by the gods. So morality is something that's tied to them, which means that, you know, you can't just be an evil bastard and not get any consequences for it. Even if you're really good at hiding your tracks, the gods are always watching. And I go into depth on how this works here. So it's a whole system, uses dice rolls plus your stats in virtue and corruption, all that stuff. Then you have languages, how they work, and then you have the basics on how you actually play the game. So there's a very simple concept to how roles work, but I think it's a pretty deep system, especially because while it's mechanically super easy to understand on what you have to do, mathematically, if you put percentages, if you try to calculate percentages for this, I couldn't get all the percentages because the computer it was like too complicated of a formula, apparently. Because you're rolling different sizes of dice, based on what you're rolling. So let's say your base dice, you can count this as your d20 instead of a d20 if you're coming from D&D. Instead of a d20, you're always rolling at least 2 d12s. But then you're also adding to this pool one of your talent or combat dice, depending on your stat. So the better you are at the stat, the higher the die, or the bigger the die, as it were. And then you can also add additional dice from your expertise and stuff. And there's, point is you're adding dice to this dice pool. And then you roll the dice pool and you pick the 2 highest results, regardless of how many dice you rolled. You always pick 2. And you add the highest results together. So like if you rolled a 5, 6, 9, and a 10, you add the 9 and the 10, and that's a 19. So your result is 19. So simple to understand, extremely complex mathematically, apparently. I'm not that big of a mathematician. I used a lot of programs to calculate the percentages for these, but if anyone's out there and can actually make can tell me how difficult this is to compute, I would love to hear it from you. So talents basically have certain scores, and then those scores correlate to certain dice. So it's 1 to 5. Think of this more as a rating, not as an actual score like in D&D. Think of this. That's why these talents are called talents and not abilities. So basically, 1 is like you haven't tapped into your potential on that talent at all. So like a 1 in strength means you're very weak. A 5 means you have maximum potential for that. And then this potential is also grows with training and using your skills. You also have 2 secondary stats called Fortune and Willpower. They're mutually exclusive. And then you can use Fortune as a luck stat for like gambling and stuff. You have efficiency expertise. Yeah, so efficiency and expertise. So this is basically this represents how much you trained in those talents. So the more efficiency you have, the more you have expertise, and expertise basically translates into extra dice. So for instance, like let's say we use strength as another example. Strength breaks down into aggression, climbing, heaving, running, and swimming. So let's say you put a little expertise into climbing, and then you climb a wall. You would add your strength die and your climbing die. So you get an extra die on the dice pool, and obviously the more you put in, the bigger the die, which increases your chances of success. So, same thing for combat, skills, and then playing the game goes into in-depth how this works. There's a pretty unique critical system that is in this game on how critical hits and critical failures work. I won't go into depth too much on how this works, but basically the idea is that you can also get a crit or a crit fail in other ways than just rolling a high number. You can basically get what's called a favorable or a penalized roll, which expands the critical range both for crits, both for successes and failures, either one or the other or both, which makes just things way more intense based on the situation at hand. You have something called determination points you can just spend for a bunch of bonuses. That's sort of like your characters. That's what makes player characters like better than the NPCs in a way, is these determination points. Sometimes you can give them to NPCs. You can give them a point or two just to make things more interesting, or like to make quote unquote boss creatures. But this is what will this and circumstantial rolls is what makes your character really, it pushes them to their edge, as it were. And gives you a bunch of bonuses. So knowing these 2 rules is gonna help you survive. You have character stats. These are just like how passive dodge works, how defense values work, speed, wounds, modifiers, blah 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 blah. You have stamina and focus, which are the 2 resources for abilities and powers. Combat, vision, combat range, cover. This is all explained. Damage types, how they're applied. Because different damage types in my game actually apply differently towards armor. This is something to keep an eye on. This is just an explanation of all the different actions. You have a list of maneuvers, such as grapples. You have conditions. Red is bad, green is good, yellow is both. And then you have fatigue, luck, and morale. These are a few mechanics in my game that I think are pretty unique. Basically, you have physical fatigue and mental fatigue, and physical fatigue basically saps your physical abilities. So that means that, like, if you have physical fatigue and you try to push a boulder, you can't add your strength to it because you're sapped. You're tired. You're drained. It's a pretty powerful mechanic that comes into play fairly often. You also have luck, which I think is a pretty necessary stat in my opinion. Some games don't have it, but I think it's a cool thing to have for like gambling and stuff. Morale. This is something I'm pretty proud of. The panic condition is dynamic in my game, meaning that when you get it, it doesn't just make you run around like a headless chicken. It basically you roll each turn and to decide how you act that turn, and the better you roll, the more you resist the panic condition. So, and the worse you roll, the more panicked you are. So, and then you have powers. They're divided into spells, incantations, and bionics. The last one is only for the third timeline, Omniverse, because these are basically magically enhanced cybernetics that are implanted into the brain. Lots of cool stuff here. The way magic works is pretty unique in my game. If you, let's say for instance, if you roll badly while you have an enemy next to you, if you roll your power roll badly to cast your spell or whatever, a mishap might occur. So I have this nice little table here. And you can manipulate almost every aspect of your spell, its range, area, form, duration, targets, all that stuff as you grow in power. It's separated into basic powers and unique ones. Basic ones are more sort of generalized powers that you gain automatically. You don't choose them, you just gain them when you gain a certain level. And then when you get to unique powers, these are the basic ones just listed here. And then when you get to the unique powers, those are more akin to like D&D D&D spells, if you were. The drawback is that they're more specific, but their range and duration are the only thing you can change when you cast them. So they're more specific. That's why they have longer descriptions. And so a combination of both of these is what makes this game pretty unique in terms of magic. I've seen players do all kinds of fun stuff with these simple spells. Like with the one of the players used a spell called Melt, just melt locks and gain access to areas. All kinds of fun stuff. This is a list of all the powers. I think there's about 20 plus in each one. So 20 times 8. You do the math. And then you got basic ones, I think about 11 times 8. A lot of choices. You got summon creature tables, stat blocks for a bunch of different summon creatures, from elementals to animals to ghosts to wisps to demons, guardians, undead, you name it. You got item rules. These are just the rules, not the actual list of items. The lists are in each codex because, I'm not going to put a energy rifle description in the fantasy timeline. So anything that's timeline specific is always in those books. This is just how items work, how they're used, how they're equipped. Yada, yada, yada. Shields, all that stuff. Tools. All right. And then you have animal companions. These are just rules for how to tame a companion, how to gain a permanent animal as your companion. And then you can teach them tricks. Vehicle rules, how vehicles work, how you fight in vehicles. And then there's also the Game Master's Guide, because, yes, in this book, I include the Game Master's Guide. This is not a separate thing. You get it when you get the core rules, and this is for the Game Masters only. You can read through how to set task difficulty, degrees of success and failure, when to make circumstantial rolls, how to create a race, how to create a universe of your own if you want to. Here's a comprehensive race creator with everything from determining how many legs they got to how many arms they got. based on a point system so that they're not OP or underpowered. A simplified version at the end. You have non-player characters. The creator for non-player characters, for NPCs. So you can make NPCs on the spot. That gives you some starting ideas. Same thing for factions. And then you have a creature creator, so you can create creatures from scratch, how to add bonuses, how to add abilities, quest rewards, creating the environment, how environment works, travel pace, weather, atmosphere, sight, hazards, radiation, diseases, time, sustenance, resting, all that stuff. Exhaustion, exploring the environment. You got all different kinds of different types of enemies. You have encounters, how to calculate encounter difficulty, how to create commanders, how to create bosses. Also, mass combat rules. I put those in as well if you want to make an army. I have those in as well. I put in objects and resources. You see just, and some crafting rules if you want to craft your own stuff. And then some downtime activities you can do off session. And that is, as they say, that. The only thing left is a GM screen. And the GM screen is basically just, I think it has the kind of stuff that in this game you gotta keep track of sometimes. So I put all this stuff in here. For resting, damage, how it's applied, damage types, difficulty tiers, degrees of success, common items that are used, like rejuvenation potions, which are basically health potions, how much they remove, determination points, what you can use them for, etc. And then you have the character sheet. Now, I made this, I think, in InDesign, Illustrator, I can't remember. Basically, I know it looks a little cluttered, but that's because all of these talents improve as you use them, and that's how your character improves. That's how XP works in my game. As you use your talents, you improve as a result, not the other way around. So on the left side you have your talents, and on the right side you have your combat skills. The middle is like, speed, defenses, attacks, inventory, and powers. You have a pet sheet as well, if you have a companion. You have a construct sheet as well, if you have a construct companion. A creature sheet for GMs. A vehicle sheet, if you have a vehicle. And a spacecraft sheet. So I gave you all kinds of different sheets you can use for anything. All right. So that is the core rules. The starter set, I'm just gonna scroll through. I'm not gonna talk through this really, because the only thing that's in here is just a condensed version of everything I've already shown you. So this is like the almost free version that you can get. You can pay 1 cent if you want. Though I'd appreciate it if you paid more. But basically, this is just a condensed version, and it also includes all the stat blocks and descriptions for items for the 3 one-shots that you get with this starter set. So you get one shot for each timeline. And they're included in the pack. I don't have them open right now, but basically each one has a one-shot in the download. So you will get that as well. So it's everything you need to test the game out. That's basically the purpose of this. And then we have the first setting book, or the first timeline book, as it were. It's called Codex Infinitum Gaia. So Gaia is the planet that's in the first timeline, and basically think high magic, high fantasy, sort of high medieval, so sort of late medieval period with some noticeable advances in certain areas. So for instance, it might be medieval weaponry, but it has certain like colonial era weaponry. If you made a parallel to like real world history. So there's like, imagine, you know, medieval equipment plus like muskets, blunderbusses, and then some crazy magical gear like flame cannons, which is like a prototype flamethrower. Stuff like that. It's not steampunk. Don't think of it really as steampunk. It's got some steampunk elements, but basically, because magic has accelerated science in this world, you have some noticeable advancements, and gunpowder and firearms is one of those. Although they are more expensive and hard to get. So we have the contents page, and then we have, it starts off with a short description of the world. It's a brief history of it and how it came to be, what it's like now, and why it is the way it is. I won't spoil all of this for you. I'll just give you a little bit of peek here. There's a timeline for all the really important events that led up to the current age. And then you have a little bit more in-depth explanation and how you can adventure in this world, you know, how law and order and all that stuff, and money and drugs and entertainment works, how adventurers can find adventures. And then we go into races and factions, and these are all the races you can play. Now, these are not all the races in the game, these are just the playable ones. There's 8 races per codex, so quite a few things to choose from. Some of them have sub-races as well. So you have a short description of the race, their culture, their appearance and age, their physiology, and their bonuses and penalties. Yes, there are also penalties, but they make sense. I didn't, you know, so like basically primals are very large because they're descendants of giants, so they're not particularly agile because of this. So their maximum agility is capped at 4. So penalties are kind of like that. They make sense. And these are all the different races you can play: Morin, Beastborn, Feral, Oran, Vizier, Gaians. You can even play, yes, Earth Golems. And they're pretty fun to play. Then you have different languages. And then you have all the major factions, their politics towards other factions and how they feel about them. There's descriptions here for all the major ones. And then there's a little map here. I'll zoom in. For how each faction controls each territory. So this kind of shows you their domains. And their flags, added flags as well. You have minor factions, like the Spell Screamers, Pirate factions. Important people, this is basically where all the faction leaders are described and what they're like. You have locations. Now, this segment actually describes every single named location on the map, which I will show you at the end. So every single named location on the map is detailed here. Like you can see, these are very short descriptions, but some of them are longer based on the significance of the location. We'll go through this. There's quite a lot of these. I'll go through this. And then you have religions. Religion is a pretty big thing in Gaia. So you can worship a particular god. And you have like depictions of each god, their symbols, their virtues, what they like and dislike in terms of offerings, and what their unique blessing and unique bane is. So if they like you, they'll bless you. If they hate you, they'll put a bane on you. So both of these are unique to each god. So you can get a lot of cool effects here. This is just a picture of the Pantheon and how everything's connected. And then you get some mythology as well, based on how people in the world perceived certain supernatural events. And then you have time and money, which is a very short section that just details the calendar, how time is measured, and the types of currencies and their exchange rates. Then you have an item section, and this is all the items that you can have. So you have brawling weapons, and then each type of weapon also has its own upgrades and downgrades which you can apply to the weapon. So there's quite a lot of customization in this game. You have brawling weapons, melee weapons, throwing weapons, archery weapons, firearm weapons, explosive weapons, magical weapons, and then you have ammunition, armor types, again, upgrades and downgrades for each. Shields, same idea. Tools, how they work, the table for the tools, and each tool has 3 different types of quality. You have miscellaneous items, again, another table for miscellaneous items, item packs. These are just like preset packs of items. Unique items, so unique items are, unique in the sense that they usually have a bonus and a penalty. So, but that kind of goes for the minor unique items. The major ones also have a penalty and a bonus, but the bonus is usually much greater than the penalty. So they usually represent the most powerful weapons in the game. I gave you quite a lot of options to choose from here as well. I think I gave each weapon 2 different uniques for minor and major. You have unique unique armors, shields, accessories, miscellaneous items. So, kind of like the stuff that you find in the DM's guide for D&D. Magic items, as it were. Not all of those are magical, but most of them are. Then you have different mounts and vehicles, vehicle weapons. I just added the different types of cannons if you want to go full-on pirate. You have unique vehicles. Yes, vehicles can also be unique based on factions. And then you have creatures. So this is just a list of stat blocks for each creature. Each one has a little short description and what languages they speak, and then it's their stat block and their abilities and all that stuff. So there's quite a lot of these. I had quite a few of these. This is a list at the end based on DR. DR is like difficulty rating, so kind of like their challenge rating, if you will. So you see them go from -6 to 30. And then you have alphabetically sorted, same list. And then you have 2 random encounter tables. One is the land encounter table, and one is the sea encounter table. So you have one for each. I tried to make them as varied as possible and put percentages inside the separate percentages that you roll for. So if you roll a 36, you can also roll again to determine even more randomness. So, because I think randomness within randomness is key to random encounters, what I called random encounters. And then we finally come to the map. So, oops. I'm not going to explain everything here, because there's a lot to explain. But let's just say that this used to be one continent, and then a magical event happened called the Great Ascension. And this gave sentience to not only beasts and various types of animals, but also to the earth and to the non-living matter. So that's how golems came about, and that's how the planet herself, Gaia, became alive. And then she split the continent like this, creating the Great Chasm between the 2 factions, because they were fighting and were about to destroy each other. And this created the Great War, so you can see this big wall on both ends. And this is basically the map. It's got a little bit of everything for everyone. I always take the pond-wide, ocean-deep approach. I try to make everything have something to do. The world is obviously not as big as, I don't know, Faerun or Golarion, but it's got a lot of stuff to do in it. And you have a little bit of everything. You have your deserts here, your steppe, you have your eternal forest, mountains here. You have canyons, you have your grasslands. You have like an island that's was kind of inspired by Greece in a way. You have your archipelagos, your Isle of the Dead, filled with undead. You have the Ashlands, which is basically a volcanic set of islands with volcanoes on them. Then you have the Ancient Waters, which is kind of like these desolate islands filled with pirates and cutthroats and such. So there's a little bit of everything. Then you have the North and the South Pole, which are also inhabited. Again, everything on this map that has a name, be it the sea, be it a town, or whatever, has a description. So you always can read a little bit about what this place is all about that you're going to with your party. So you get an idea of how this will work. This was hand-drawn, by the way. So I hope you like it. And that's that. That's what you get for $5. A good $5. Now, let's jump into the second one. You have Unity. This is basically Gaia 3,000 years in the future. So I'm not going to go over all the structures here because the structure of the document is very, very similar to Gaia and the Omniverse, the way everything's laid out in terms of, the chapters and such. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. So basically, Gaia used to be this magical place where everything was almost sentient. And then an event happened called the annulment, which sucked out 90% of the world's magic, even from the creatures. And so it created new races. Everything was based more on science, less on magic. So this was like this cataclysmic event because a lot of, races just simply changed because the magic wasn't present in their bodies anymore. Some even developed mutations. And not only that, but like the oceans. So like this is the faction map. But like if you look at there's no oceans anymore because they dried up. All that's left is like a few pools of water, a few little large lakes, if you will. That's the only remaining water there's stuff on the mainland, but this mainland is controlled by an autocratic regime that has an iron grip on its populace. And anyone who doesn't want to live in this place makes their way in the wasteland. And the wasteland is like, think Fallout without the radiation. Sometimes think radiation as well because there are irradiated areas, but not because of any nukes or anything, but for different reasons. Yeah, it's an interesting place. It's like if you want to go, if you want to play that corporate sort of, want to have a corporate setting where the elites control everything and just like a cog in the machine, you can play in the mainland. That's the perfect place to do it because it's run by this regime that's basically got full control of the mainland. If you want to play more of a Fallout-ish game, go to the Wasteland. There's plenty of stuff buried there, plenty of secrets. There's also religions, obviously, the religion page. There's a new religion, the Aspects of the Sora, which is a monotheistic religion with different aspects that kind of act like the moods of the main god, if you will. And you can worship these. And then each is obviously detailed here. There's outlawed religions. The Gaian Pantheon is one of them. It's also in here, copied from the first book in case you want to be a pagan. And there's also a bit of mythology. The problem is there's only one because the the regime decided that they were going to determine what mythology is allowed to be thought of as real and what isn't. So they just propagate the birth of the Sora, and that's it. Everything else is heresy. Time and money. Again, the short segment, cash, calendar, items, all the different items. Again, all the different weapon types. But firearms are obviously way more expanded because, got all kinds of weapons now. And you also have weapon attachments you can put on your weapons. And you have explosive weapons also expanded. And you also have magical weapons again. Ammunition, armor, shields, tools. So same structure, like I said before, just different stuff. Miscellaneous items, item packs, different items in the items pack because there's different items in this timeline, but the packs are named the same, so there's no confusion. Unique items. You got everything from sawed-off shotguns to PDVs, you name it. PDWs, what are they called? I can't remember. Assassin's garb, all this kind of stuff. Extending shield, reinforced armor, experimental exosuit for those of you who like power armor. All kinds of stuff, X-ray glasses, Blue Dream, even like fun little drugs that you can take that have like side effects. One of the players of mine really likes that one. Because it's just like funny stuff that happens. Frost Treat. Yeah, I put a lot of funny stuff in here on purpose. You also have Waste Weed, which is basically the wasteland version of you know what? Marijuana. And then there's like different steps of highness that you can get when you get stoned. Magazines you can collect for bonuses. Stuff like that. And then you have vehicles, vehicle weapons, unique vehicle. And then creatures, all the different creature stat blocks. Again, quite a lot of these. And then, of course, creatures by DR, alphabetically sorted. And then you have random encounters table, one for the mainland and one for the wasteland. And now let me show you the map. All right. Pretty cool map, huh? This is basically, like I said, the oceans are gone. So this is the wasteland, and everyone's fighting for these little ponds of water. There's raiders. There's like scavengers. There's the outlaws. There's the barony, which pumps oil and makes gasoline. There's the green thumbs, who try to revitalize the wasteland. There's all kinds of different factions. They all have their own philosophies, and a lot of them are at war with each other. The mainland, like I said, is just autocratic regime, just complete control, autocracy. Magic is outlawed. You need a license to practice it. And if you break that law, they send you to a certain prison where they brainwash you and then stick you in a hole. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's intentionally brutal. But it can be a lot of fun if you know how to. If you want sort of that intrigue type of play, or stuff like that. The wasteland is, like I said, very Fallout-ish type of campaign. You can do both. You can go from and to the wasteland, although there is not an easy way of doing that, but there are ways you can do that. So that's pretty much Unity. Obviously, there's a lot more to this setting, but I'm kind of glancing through this because I don't want to make too long of a video. So, and then we have the third one, Edge, Codex, Infinitum, Omniverse. That is the last and final timeline. It is space, it is sci-fi, it is space exploration, ships, space combat, all that good stuff. Again, a little bit of overview. Timeline is actually in 2 pages because it goes from the beginning of the galactic birth to all the way to the current age. And the Gaia and Unity timelines are also inside here. See, Gaia timeline, Unity timeline, so you know where they fall in the sort of the time continuum. You have detailed explanation here on how stuff works, how magic has augmented a lot of the space. Probably the craziest set of races I ever done in this setting. You have the Desorans, which are like genetically manipulated beings, like genetic splicing and stuff. Spacers, which are kind of like humans but with black eyes and tattoos. Galaxans, Samaritans, basically Voltans, intergalactic paladins, Voidborn, crystalline beings, like crystalline samurai, if you will. Scorchers, corporeal elementals, Gillisan, or basically like half-ascended beings, and robots, soulless. Special type of robots that have kind of a twist to them. I won't say what it is, but you can read through it. They're not just regular robots. And then there's also a little description on what happened to the races that are now extinct from the previous timeline. Languages, factions, same as before. A little bit of map on how the factions have each their own territory. Outlaw Alliance, Caliphate, Cosmic Conflagration, Voidwind Cluster, Stellar Vindication, Star Seekers, Unified Collective. By the way, this is just the known Omniverse. This is just the charted type of space. It spreads in all directions. It's nearly infinite. So don't worry about finding new stuff, because there's a lot of it. Important people, all the faction leaders, locations. Again, everything on the map that's named is explained here, as I said, for each timeline. There's a lot of it. And also, when it details solar systems, it details all the planets in those solar systems. So you have a short explanation for each planet that's occupied. Religions, probably the biggest chapter in this book, aside from the location one, because you have a whole omniverse full of religions. So you got all kinds of cults and old religions, the Church of Unity, the Gaian Pantheon, and then new ones, and then only certain races worship. All kinds of stuff, different mythologies on how the galaxy was born, how it extended, how the Voidborn came to be, how the cosmic eras form and end, and time and money, the deal, basically, how the calendar is maintained. There's an omniversal calendar, which is basically a calendar that applies to the entire Omniverse, so it's like a universal time measurement that's based on a certain anomaly that I'll show you at the end. Currency, credits, cred chips, you got biocreds, subcredits, and then items, brawling, melee. I kept all the weapon skills the same. In terms of weapon types, it's just different weapons, so you can always have those skills. There's no skill that's like doesn't have a weapon in a certain timeline. Every timeline has weapons for a particular weapon skill. Ammunition here, armor, shields, the deal. Tools, tool table. Cyberware. This is unique to this setting. So you can implant certain cyberware into your bodies. I got all kinds of stuff from cybernetic arms to DNA maskers. Miscellaneous items, miscellaneous table, item packs, unique items, everything from gauss guns to fucking cosmic orbs. All kinds of cool shit. Yeah. Vehicles. Different kinds of vehicles. Everything's hover based. Everything hovers, flies. Weapons for the vehicles. Unique vehicles. Spacecraft. Unique to this setting as well. This shows you how to operate spacecraft. Its stations. Everything about spacecraft. Space combat. Complications on the ship. Hull damage. Fires. All that stuff. Different types of spacecraft. Fighter bombers, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, colossi. Weapons for different types of weapons for the ship. Unique spacecraft. Again, gotta have the unique versions. Creatures, and then a bunch of creatures all the way to the end here. So you got another creatures by DR table. Alphabetically sorted creatures. And 2 random encounters. One is space encounters and one is terrestrial. So I try to make these terrestrial ones something that can happen on any planet. Obviously, every planet is different, but I try to make something that every planet can, you can put these encounters on any planet probably. And then the map. See the Omniverse. By the way, like I said, I have the pond-wide, ocean-deep approach, but let me be clear. let me be clear. This is not small, because if I zoom in here, see? 60 light years. So one of these little hexagons is about 60 light years in size. Obviously, there's warp drives. You can jump between sectors. You're not going to travel for ages. It takes about an hour to jump through a sector. So, or you can use jump gates, and there's all kinds of stuff. Point is, oh, and I mentioned the way to track time. This maelstrom of creation is literally where space is born. It's where it flows from and expands. So this is literally the center of the Omniverse. And this thing spins around like a vortex, and they use that as a clock. So that's the universal time that's measured based on this maelstrom that I mentioned before. You got all kinds of weird stuff in this galaxy. Like, just to give you an example, the cosmic wound is literally a rip in space-time. So this is a hole between the Omniverse and the ether that lies beyond it. Then you have the solar giant, which is a star that is a few seconds from going supernova, but never does because it's in a time dilation field and always then reverts back a couple of seconds, and it's always like creating this massive amount of energy, which they harness with the observatory. And then you have the frozen comet, which is also frozen in time, and it's just like flying, but it's not moving. It's just, and now it's becoming a tourist attraction. And then you have weird stuff like the Star Mother, which is literally a star cloud that speaks. You got the Beltway, which is a three-dimensional electromagnetic field that spins around and protects the Voidborn cluster from intruders because they're an isolated empire. I think kind of like Space Japan if they were crystal golems and they found a weapon to keep intruders out. That's the Beltway. All kinds of weird shit, but I think cool shit because I try to make this stuff, even though I describe all these anomalies and all this stuff, basically there's I intentionally leave some parts of the description vague, so there's an air of mystery to them, so you can explore those, use that as plot hooks. So that's it. That's the Omniverse. Lots of cool stuff. We're already running a campaign in this, and I think the players are into it. They are basically exploring different locations. They were in the Alliance, the Federation. Every place is different, so it's a lot of variety in this Omniverse. And beyond these borders is deep space. So if you want to play Star Trek, get a ship and fly beyond. This is just the known part of the Omniverse, the charted part. The uncharted part, deep space, anything goes. You don't know what the hell you're going to find out there. So if you want to play Star Trek, that's the way to go. And I also gave you a inverted version with the colors inverted so that if you want to print it out, it doesn't kill your printer. Because this would be incredibly taxing in terms of ink. Look at how much black space. This is like, the space is black, it has to color every single cell. So inverted it so that it's easier to print. And that is that. So, I hope you like this little presentation. I hope maybe I convinced you to give it a try. If nothing else, maybe pick up the starter set. Like I said, it's a pay what you want title. I got 3 one-shots in there that I played with probably about 30 groups, 40 groups so far. Got a lot of positive feedback on them. The one-shots are made in a way to give you a nice little taste of how gameplay works in that setting, that timeline. So if you're interested, in the description of this video, I put a discount code for each of these books, except for the starter set, obviously, because it's a pay what you want. And if you use that code, you're going to get a 50% discount on the book. Each book only has 10 uses, though. So the first 10 people who use those codes for each book are going to get a 50% discount. So I hope you like it. Hope you spread this. Hope you share it. During this age of OGL cataclysm, I think it's important that people like me give you some sort of alternative and give you something to play that's made, with passion and from the heart, and not just a way to make money. And it's also made by me. It's not made by people who hate you. It's made by someone who wants you to have fun, and definitely this was definitely a labor of love in many ways. So I hope you enjoy it. Give this video a thumbs up, like, subscribe, all the deals. And I'll come back and chime in on some more stuff that's developing in the TTRPG world soon enough. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.